Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jerry with Dub Bears Talk, and today we get to talk about an exciting win that the Bears just had in preseason, and just a sweep in general. Obviously, it's just the preseason, so not a massive deal, but what is exciting is to see all the stars that we expected to do well, doing well, as well as all the people on the lower tier, which is who we're going to be talking about today. This is my top 5 roster locks, and this is for making the 53-man roster. Now, there are a couple names that I'll mention throughout the video that I think are probably more likely a lock than some of the people mentioned today. The main reason I'm bringing these up is I was able to get to 5 different positions too, which I really wanted to get at. Once I saw the names I was going for, I thought it would be nice to include one for each position. Some you might have thought was a lock anyway. Some might have just built their stock a lot today. So let's get right into it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, let's get right into it. We're going to start off with Micah Baskerville. 4 tackles. So the stats are throughout the whole preseason. So he did only have the 4 tackles. He had a tackle for a loss. He had a QB hit. He also had an interception, which was a great route jump, and he ends up taking it for 6. Now, I think his ability to play coverage as a linebacker, and even it kind of almost seems like a safety at times. He's about safety size at 6 foot, like 220s, 230s. So it's nice to have somebody that can be quick like that in the box. And I think that as far as a depth guy goes, and especially on special teams, he's been an influence there as well. And with being that much of an influence there and the plays that he made in preseason, I think he's pretty much locked to be on the roster. Now, he's at number 5 because I think it was kind of inferred. He's also the only person on this list that's listed as 2 on the depth chart right now. But I'm putting him as a lock just because he didn't get any time, really. I think he appeared in 2 games last year, but he didn't even record a stat because obviously with nickel and dime packages becoming a lot more popular and keeping a lot more speed on the field, there's not as many linebackers to begin with. And obviously we already have Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards and Jack Sanborn starting. Noah Sewell is another young name that people think, will likely be, filling in as well. So I think Baskerville's a lock for me. There's also, a lot of the other, you don't really have any big names behind him. So I think this is kind of a bit of a gimme, but I wanted to highlight his good play, especially the read on that pick 6 that he got throughout preseason. But he's my first lock. Again, not crazy news, but had a couple shining plays. And that moves us on to Josh Blackwell, who is kind of my other one where you'd kind of go, oh, is this really a lock? Like, he was on the team last year. I believe he actually was still on the team the year before as well. So he's been around, but with the additions that they've made, as far as, drafting corners over time, and especially too with, a new addition at safety, and Kevin Byard, it just continues to kind of move him down the depth chart. But I believe Josh Blackwell is more than worthy of a roster spot, and it seems like he might even start as the punt returner. If you look, he had 3 punt returns, which was the most in the last 2 games of any player, and he had 27 yards, which is fine. It's a lot better than another player that we're going to talk about in this video, but in today's game, he has the massive hit on the quarterback, on I believe it was Logan Woodside at the time, and the ball flies up in the air and then ends up getting picked off because of it. So big play, forcing an interception. He's gotten the TFL, and he's also been really good at making open field tackles, which some of the Bears have had problems with. Obviously not Kyler Gordon, too, if you watch today's game. But yeah, in that last preseason game showcased very well how well Josh Blackwell can tackle, as well as Kyler Gordon in this. The open field tackling was phenomenal. But yeah, I think Josh Blackwell, between his stats that he's shown here and his help on special team, definitely makes him a lock. Again, this one might not be as much of a surprise, but I just wanted to highlight his great contributions in these preseason games, as well as the effect that he can have on the team, is being a big name that if he goes down, or if any of the starters go down, honestly, at any position, the way he was filling in at nickel corner was great. He can do good in coverage, but he can also hit pretty hard for being a little bit smaller at like 5'10, 5'11, 180. He's not a big guy, but he can hit, and he can properly form tackle, which I think is definitely well needed in the secondary of this team. But he could fill in at either safety spot. He could fill in at nickel corner. He's currently not listed in the depth chart for the cornerbacks because he is a safety, but he's listed as I think he's listed as nickel corner right now. He's third string nickel corner. But obviously, in certain packages, I wouldn't mind seeing him on the field on occasion, especially if you've got guys that are tired, or if one of those three, nickel corner or one of the safeties is injured and they need more time to heal, throw Josh Blackwell on the field because he's been doing great. He's almost guaranteed to make the team, at least for special teams, or hopefully even some snaps on the field. Again, players getting tired, whatnot, I can trust Josh Blackwell on the field. And that moves us on to Ian Wheeler, who I just had a video about. Very excited about Ian Wheeler. Now, I think this one is a little bit more of a surprise. Obviously, in the last preseason game against the Bengals, he didn't really do very much. He had like 2 carries, 4 yards, and then he had the 2 receptions for 14 yards, which is nice. That he was able to show that he's not going to drop the ball and can actually hang on to it in presumably what's going to be a little bit more receiving heavy or receiving needy running back room with how the offense seems to be going. But main highlight is from that Bills game where he has, I believe it was 5 carries, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was kind of his little breakout game where he showed what he could do. And if you watched my Everything You Need to Know video, I do highlight a lot of his pros and cons, one being how he chops his feet. He just never stops chopping his feet. He runs hard. He lowers his shoulder and he covers the ball well. It was how you're supposed to do it. You can see the receiving touchdown column is blank. Obviously, he didn't score any there. But yeah, I think being able to receive the ball as well as running the ball hard and showing out, I think he deserves a roster spot. Now, the tough part about this is, does this mean you're carrying a 5 running back room? Because there's talk of, obviously, so we'll go over Swift first, obviously going to start. Then you have Roschon Johnson, who's your young other guy. You have Khalil Herbert. There's speculation he could be traded. Even the Cowboys showing interest in a trade for him being a possibility. There was also, so there's your 3 running backs there. You have Kari Blasingame, who's almost guaranteed to make the roster. So then are you going to include Ian Wheeler? And then also, if you think about Velus Jones Jr., who's done pretty well in the running back room so far, are you gonna keep him too? So it does make it very difficult. This, for me, Ian Wheeler should be on the team. And I also think, if we're going to stretch the words a little bit, I think at the very least, I think he makes it through into the practice squad, being that he's just an undrafted free agent that's on the team. I think he would make it through to that anyway. But I honestly think that he should be on the team. I would rather pass on Velus Jones. I think if Velus Jones makes it, it's because his running back department is doing good enough. He's still expected to be able to catch the ball and showing some improvement there. And he ends up being the kick returner. Because, fun fact, in the last 2 games, the only person that returned kicks for the Bears in those last 2 games was Velus Jones Jr. So that tells me that he might make it. And actually, once I saw that, I was a lot more tempted to not put Ian Wheeler in here and just put Velus Jones. But that's not as interesting. So I wanted to include Ian Wheeler because, again, I think it's worthy of making the team. I think especially if Khalil Herbert's gone, I think he's pretty much a lock to make the team. But we'll have to see on that. And we'll have to move on to Dante Pettis, who I think is another guy that, he's been on the team the past couple of years. So you go, oh, is this really why is this a surprising lock? Well, you have guys like, Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen join the team. Tyler Scott is still on the roster. Colin Johnson has a phenomenal first game. So what's going to happen there? Shouldn't Colin Johnson be on this list? And that was my other thought. And I think if you'd like to just flip the spots and put Colin Johnson in here because you think that he's less of a lock and it's not really a surprise that Pettis is going to make it, I think you can very well say that it is, because if you look at Dante Pettis's stats there, really he was on the team before because he was a good receiver for depth, and he was a good returner. A more reliable returner is probably the best way to put it. And we hadn't really had that yet. So if somebody comes out as they're likely going to be the returner. Obviously, Dante Pettis didn't do well. He had 2 punt returns, one he fair caught with a good reason, and the other one, he just ran backwards and got tackled. So I think that with his receptions this game, 2 years ago, when Mooney went down, Pettis was the best route runner on the team. I still think he is a good route runner, and I think he deserves to be on the team because of his effect on special teams, as well as if you look at like size and ability, Dante Pettis' best trait is his route running. That's also one of Keenan Allen's best traits, a phenomenal route runner. And it was about the same size. Dante Pettis is 6'1", Keenan Allen 6'2". I'm not saying that Dante Pettis is Keenan Allen, but I think that that's if Keenan Allen goes down, which he has had plenty of injuries in his history, Dante Pettis, I feel like fills that gap better than somebody like Colin Johnson, who would also be fun to watch, just go up and get it. And he's honestly one of my honorable mentions. I think there's good reason to believe that he would make it as well. And I think if Velus Jones wasn't the only one returning kicks in these last 2 games, I would almost be more sure that Velus Jones isn't going to make it just because they haven't been able to slide him into a spot. But yeah, Pettis most of his stats are from this last game, but 8 targets, 5 receptions, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the punt returning wasn't great, but I just think he deserves to be on the team. He deserves to stay. Right now, he's listed at like wide receiver 8 or 9 on the depth chart, which that's usually towards the end. So it's kind of tough to tell. I think he should be on the team. I think he deserves it because of his versatility. I also think you can make an argument for Colin Johnson. He's my honorable mention here, but I chose Dante Pettis at number 2. And that means that you know who number 1 is, who's just been going off. Daniel Hardy also just did a video on him, going over everything that you need to know about him and some more of the past, interesting past, and some cool fun facts in that video. So check that one out. But Daniel Hardy absolutely has gone off. These stats are only from basically 2 games. He had 1 tackle and 1 QB hit in the first game. That was the Hall of Fame game against the Texans. So 9 tackles, 5 TFLs, 3.5 sacks, and 5 QB hits and a forced fumble in 2 games is incredible. Now, granted, it is against a lot more backups, but with how well he's done and just being this kind of practice squad guy that bounces around, he's really only been on the Rams, and he actually was with the Bears on the practice squad last year. I think that he's really shown and stood out amongst the rest of them. Dominique Robinson was kind of a favorite among some Bears fans who did pretty well in the preseason last year alongside Terrell Lewis, and they wanted him to be around. They're like, oh, Dom Rob could be something, and he just really hasn't shown out. Granted, Dominique Robinson still is ahead of Daniel Hardy in the depth chart. He's listed as edge rusher, or I think it's like right side edge 3. So I think he almost guaranteed should have a spot. He has a nice plethora of different pass rush moves. He does need work still on his run game defense, but I think Eric Washington and Montez Sweat can help with that. He doesn't quite have the size of guys like Austin Booker and Montez Sweat, but I think there's room for him there. And if you told me that the 4, starting is Montez Sweat and probably DeMarcus Walker with Austin Booker and Daniel Hardy behind, you've got a nice young group of 4 people that are on the edge, and they can swap out, they can sub out, make sure that people stay healthy and rejuvenated and full of energy. And that can be really dangerous in the NFL when it's 3rd and long and, the offensive line has been out there the whole time. And, you just need to get in the backfield, or you just need to make a play. To put fresh bodies out there is just, it's a nice move to be able to have. And I think Daniel Hardy showed more than enough to be able to get a spot. And I think it would be criminal. I was honestly really upset when Terrell Lewis didn't get a spot last year, because he had a fairly similar preseason to Daniel Hardy stat-wise, and he didn't end up making the roster. And I was kind of bummed about that. Now, I guess he didn't really make it through to any 53-man rosters anyway. And I believe he took snaps with the Bears this year in preseason. Didn't really do very much this year. But I think Daniel Hardy is a lock, like for sure. And if they don't, I kind of have a problem with it because he played too well. And the stats speak for themselves. That was only 2 games. So let me know what you think of all these 5 down below. Again, Daniel Hardy, clearly my favorite, but a lot of these guys showed out. They did well and made the plays that they need to look good for the roster. And then especially a lot of these in their special teams games, it was very important. One other honorable mention I forgot to mention was Keith Randolph. Keith Randolph, I thought, did pretty well mainly at just being a big guy to fill a hole. Kind of like similar to Andrew Billings. Unfortunately, we didn't see any like sacks or any massive plays from Keith Randolph, but he was able to, he didn't get pushed back very often, which I think is huge for a defensive tackle. Even if you're going to take that Andrew Billings route of really just being an anchor that can kind of jump to the left or the right and fill whatever hole you need to. If you had Keith Randolph and, Andrew Billings, the 4, like the 3 inside, or I guess it's 4 inside gaps, pretty much off limits because they can just stand there. They can go up against their guy and then just shoot into whichever hole. So I think Keith Randolph, another one that kind of we got a third honorable mention, I guess. So Colin Johnson, Velus Jones, and Keith Randolph, obviously the honorable mentions on this list. But again, let me know what you think down below. Is there anything you'd change? Is there another player that I should have highlighted? Greg Stroman was another one. He's kind of been on the team. He's listed as nickel corner 2 right now, so I didn't want to include him. But let me know if there's more down below. Like the video as well if you liked it. Subscribe for more. Plenty of Bears videos coming out, as well as NCAA content, and then as well as food reviews. I do those. So thank you for watching and have a great day.